With me on the podcast today, Derik Baker, known to the world as Virginia to Vegas. And I've been a big fan of your music since the beginning, Derik. So it's great to have you on. But as I was doing some research for the podcast, I also learned a little bit about you, some of the stories, and I got to listen to. One of my favorites is the fact that when you were 5 years old and in kindergarten, you wanted to bring your guitar to show and tell, to show off for a girl that you had a crush on. And around that time as well, you told your parents that you thought you were the incarnation or the reincarnation of Elvis Presley. So from a very early age, you knew you wanted to do this.
Wow, that's a good deep dive dig. Thanks for the intro. It's nice to be here with you, and nice to have a chat. Um, yeah, I mean, thinking about music and thinking about my life without music, I don't know that I've ever consciously ever thought of a reality without me being a musician. It's just always been something that I've wanted to do, and it's I think it's rare because I don't know that I hear that from all my friends. Um, so I think I'm fortunate in that sense. I because I'm not a fast learner.
Well, I think to a degree, it is a relatively common story for people who were meant to do this because it's almost like you have to burn your bridges and just focus in order to achieve some level of success in this business.
Sure, yeah. I mean, um,
Not burn your bridges, I'm sorry, burn your boats. Take the island by burning your boats so there's no way to retreat, right? You just got to go for it.
I think about, it's funny you say that. I was thinking the other day about if I would have started later, and if I would have like made the mistakes I made earlier later, if I would have had the gas to keep going, but because I started so young and because it was such a part of my life, like the thought of it not working, or the thought of not continuing on, never even crossed my mind. It was just like, well, this is what you do. You have to keep going.
What mistakes did you make early on that you feel might have been major impediments for you as now you've gotten a little older and you've been in the business a little longer?
I think mistakes like, I mean, obviously, not so much life mistakes. I just think like creative decisions, or people that you work with, or crowds that you get caught up in, or things that you view as being important. Um, you know, where I think I was fortunate enough that by the time I had my first hit on radio at 24, I'd kind of gotten through college, I'd gotten through a bunch of partying, I'd gotten through, like a bunch of obstacles I'd gone through, like being, broke and not being able to afford my apartment, and, and all of that stuff. So when it was time for music to take off, I had a steady ground, and I'm grateful for that because it wasn't without a bumpy road, that's for sure.
And your first single, correct me if I'm wrong, but it went platinum. Did it
Yeah.
not? We Are Stars went platinum. Did that put a disproportionate amount of pressure on you? Like as much of a blessing as it is to have your first single go platinum, it's like, dear God, I hope I can follow this up. I'm sure that must have been a thought in the back of your mind.
It put an unrealistic perspective on the industry. I think I just figured that this is how it happens, You write once you get your shot, you're kind of guaranteed it. Like, you're in. And I remember this movie when I was a kid. I used to watch with Adam Sandler, called Airheads. You remember that movie where they're
Yes.
in a rock band? And I always used to think, like, you know, if you get your one shot, that's all you need. But I think what I learned, because of We Are Stars doing well, and because of the next couple songs not doing well, and having to figure out, having to play catch up pretty quick, um, was that it's not about one shot, it's about a million little shots that add up. And that's kind of what We Are Stars did to me. It gave me an unrealistic perspective on success.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I just recently listened to this interview with Jay-Z where he talked about that exact same phenomenon where he said, So many people in this business are chasing the heat. They're chasing the short term uh, desire to achieve fame, and not enough of them are playing out or planning out what they want to do in terms of legacy for a career. And he talks about the distinction of those two different pursuits. One is you're
Mm,
chasing popularity, and the other one is you're doing your own thing, but you might be reinventing to a degree, and you might be innovating as you're introducing something to the market, and that takes a lot more courage to take something almost new and different to the market rather than trying to chase trends
mhm.
safely to achieve popularity.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, for me, I've always been an analyzer. My thing in music is, I mean, I always try to analyze what's going on in subculture, and as a record producer, and figure out how I can be at least at the front or close to the front of the curve. I'm never envious of the guy that takes the first record out, and I've never been the one that's been I don't think like a huge innovator in the music industry. Um, but I think I've been good at being number two, and and that's been pretty good for me. I've enjoyed it because I've been able to move along throughout 8 years in the pop music industry, which is pretty difficult. Like the music industry's changed tremendously since when I started.
Yeah, 2014 to now, lots of changes. So when you did start, you were signed with Wax, which is a pretty powerful indie label.
Mhm.
Eventually, it looks like that deal evolved into more involvement from Universal Music, and they got a bit more involved in promoting your products. Um, what's it been like having a little bit more major label muscle behind your career on this last record or last few records?
I mean, I don't think you can't. It's almost impossible to go against the majors and do what they do. It's just that's what they've done for 50, 60 years really well. It's the machine. Luckily, I've been pretty fortunate in my deal with Wax, and by virtue my deal with Universal, that I've had a lot of autonomy and a lot of creative freedom. Like, I write all my songs and produce all my records with my friends, and it wasn't until the last music video that we hired a director. We did it just me and my best friend. So it's like it's been, you know, it's been pretty good in that sense. And then just having the force of Wax, number one, who's been a longtime partner and a great partner, and then Universal, the various partners there, whether it be Republic or Casablanca or whoever's working the record, in terms of like a US partner. Um, I mean, just incredible because they have such a great reach on playlists. And to speak to like 2014 to 2021, we're crazy how much time has gone by. Um, but when I put my first single out, the main source of consuming that music was through iTunes and purchasing it. And now, the main source of consumption is playlists. And that's even changing because playlists are being driven by TikTok, which now I got to figure that out.
Yeah, it's like every time we think we've got a handle on this business, technology comes along and upsets the apple cart, and we all need to start over. Which in some ways is good. It forces innovation, and it gives artists who maybe are outside of the ecosystem an opportunity to break through by accessing their own audience. But it also means that some of these behemoths like Universal Music or Warner Records have to keep up with the trends. Sony, like they
Hmm.
are forced to keep up with the new way of doing business and breaking artists because that's changing all the time. Now it's a little different in country music where the DSPs are still pretty powerful. Radio is still a big player. You would be classified, I guess, as an indie pop artist. If they were to throw a label on you of some sort, or a pop artist, I should say. But you write songs with sensibilities that are appealing to multiple demographics and genres. Like Betterman, for example, has the soul of a country song. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm so happy to see that you're delving into writing a little bit more and pitching some country stuff, because when I listen to your records, I'm like, this guy could totally write country. This guy could put out a country record.
Right. I mean, I that's probably just because I'm such a fan of country music. I mean, ever since Brett and I met back in, I didn't really understand country music until then, but I met Brett at an award show in like 2015, and um, and him and I exchanged emails. And I remember I went down to a writing trip in Nashville and just kind of like fell in love with the way that country and country is such a funny word because country songs aren't even country songs. It's just like it's pop music with better storytelling. You know what I mean? It's like it's I that's the thing that I've always loved about country music because most of these pop country artists, they're great pop songs, but they're written in a different format. And I've fallen in love with that format. And what I've tried to do is try to kind of insert that format into a pop record and see if I can get away with it.
And I think it's brilliant. And obviously, you're what, 4 platinum singles at this point? About to have 5?
I I don't know. We had I think Just Friends is platinum, Lights Out is platinum, Selfish is platinum, and We Are
We
Stars
Are
is platinum.
Stars. Yeah.
So that would be 4.
Yeah, 4, and Betterman is probably well on its way. So, your 4 platinum singles. So that formula does seem to be working well for you. And I think there is something to identifying, paying attention to other formats and what they're doing right, which is something you've done, obviously. Identifying where the gaps might be in your own format to tell a better story rather
Sure,
than relying so much on production, right?
sure.
And I think if there's any detrimental connotation that I can put on pop music, it's that sometimes it relies too heavily on the production, and you haven't fallen into that trap. Although the production is great on your songs, so good on you, man.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I think and it's not for a lack of bad songs with good production, because there's so many songs that are sitting in a folder that sound like hit records but aren't hit records because there's not a story there. And luckily through great A&R and great partners and great friends and great uh, you know, collaborators over the years, people have kind of said, "Hey, man, these records sound great, but like, something missing." And it took a little bit of living and a little bit of life to start realizing, oh yeah, like start telling your own stories instead of trying to tell stories that like you think people want to hear. And I think that's kind of tricky in pop music because um, pop music is so it's like how do you say the simplest thing in the most obscure way? Whereas like a country song is like how do you say the thing you want to say uh, in the cleverest way,
Yes,
if that
yeah,
makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like
and most
the flow.
melodic way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I don't know. I made good friends with this guy named Jeff Warburton, who has had a lot of success with a bunch of artists. He's written with FGL and he's written with a bunch of artists in the States. But the big one was Shawn Mendes. And, him and I, when we got together, what we were doing kind of clicked, and he was able to help me um, put a, put a, put the right format to a story. And that's when Better Man and Just Friends started clicking.
Yeah, it's always so compelling to me to listen to people like yourself who are great songwriters and understand that there are these sort of universal or meta truths of experience that almost all human beings have, whether it's some form of heartbreak or falling in love or some other experience that feels like everyone's been through their own version of it at one point or another in their life,
Mm,
and then taking that and distilling it down the same way that other art forms do. A lot of books are sort of meta truths, even movies. There's like the hero and the anti hero, and there's complications, and there's, you know, there's universal truths that sort of always line up
Hmm.
and to a degree tell the same story, but always in a different way. And you feel like the best way to do that is to tap your own experience and not necessarily just chase trends of what seems to be popular on the radio or on the DSPs at the time.
I think so. I think the more specific you get, also that was a great explanation. That's, I mean, that explained it better than I possibly could have. But yeah, I think the more you, I think the more specific and personal you get in terms of songwriting and storytelling, the more relatable it becomes. It's like an opposite effect. But when you paint a picture with a broad stroke, it's like it just becomes broad, and it's like it's not compelling. So even though like you might say something like, a lyric with someone's hair color or eye color or the type of shoes they were wearing, or that favorite bar that you have, that might be not the favorite bar that that other person has. But when you say it specifically in a song and someone hears that detail, it triggers a thought in their head, and they go, "Oh, that reminds me of this person," even if the detail is different. And
Right.
and that's what I loved about songs when I was a kid. It was like, I'd listen to all these amazing, bands like Taking Back Sunday or The Used or like these rock bands, and I didn't have any heartbreak experience or anything like that. Um, but I could still put myself in the story. You know what I mean? Because it was compelling language.
Yeah, and there's something about the articulation of those intimate details that give it an emotional connection for almost any audience member to relate to. And I like exactly what you said there, where it's like it doesn't have to be the exact same experience. It can be a totally different experience, but the communication of the intimacy of that experience and how personal it was is something that is universally relatable.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's songs out there that, I remember speaking with my dad about music, and I remember him playing a song for me, and before I started like paying attention to lyrics, listening to the lyrics, and in my head, I thought the song was about something totally different than what it was actually about. You know what I mean? Or like, the Beatles song, what is it? Funny Paper? Yeah, you only give me your funny paper. And in the middle of negotiations, it's talking about, I never thought about what that song actually meant until you actually think about it, but it still made me think of a sad moment or a sad time. But it's apparently about, the Beatles and contracts and breaking up. And that's so specific, but I'm sure other people can think about that song and put their own story to it.
100%. Funny papers could apply to a divorce. It doesn't need to be breaking up a band. And I'm sure it
Exactly.
felt like a divorce for those guys. So another thing I noticed is everybody loves to ask you about the origin of your name, and you
Hmm.
did start out as a duo. And just correct me if I'm wrong at any point here, but your parents, you were born in Richmond, Virginia,
That's right.
by two Canadian parents. You're a Canadian citizen,
Yeah.
and the original partner in your duo had a name of Vegas. First name or last name?
It was his stage name.
Okay.
So he went by Vegas. So we met through a friend of mine named Christian Ferrero, who was the younger brother of Nathan Ferrero, the singer of the Midway State, and which was a band that was popular in
About
the
10
early.
years ago.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they had a couple hits, and Nate's remained a great friend of mine. He's written a bunch of records with me for Virginia Vegas, but anyhow, that's who Dave was, and he really taught me the ropes on how to record a vocal and how to. He was the brains. I was in college, and I was like, I know how to market something, and I'm deeply in love with music, but I don't know how to do this. And I know you're really good at playing the keyboard and recording things, and if you give me those skills, I'll give you these, and let's see where we can get this thing.
Right. And at what point did you guys decide to go your separate ways? And was it mostly positive when you did do that?
It was heartbreaking for me because I wasn't ready to be solo. I didn't have the skills to be solo. I wasn't, like at this point when we were recording, we were doing covers and cover music videos. I think I was 18 or 19. It was first year of college, and I was so bad at singing on the microphone, like in a studio, that like every single word was comped. It was like I was terrible, and he basically decided that it was it wasn't the path for him. He wanted to still go and be an artist on his own, and the way that things were shaping up, it was kind of like I was the main guy and he was like the side guy. And that wasn't his vision. He was like, I want to go and do my own thing, which he went on and did. And we're still great friends. He lives in Los Angeles. He actually just wrote that song "Build a Bee." I won't finish the word because I don't know if there's any kids listening. But
You can
by
swear on this podcast. It's all
Okay.
good.
All right.
Yeah.
He wrote "Build a Bitch" by Bella
Yeah.
Porch, which was now the number one debut on in YouTube history, which is crazy. And he's been grinding, 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 grinding as a songwriter for all this time. And all this time I've been doing the artist thing, and yeah, I still have so much love for him and so much respect because
It must have ignited a bit of a friendly competition vibe between the two of you two, where when you went off your own separate ways and you're wishing him the best, but you also, as an individual, sort of went from the frying pan into the fire, to use an old expression. And so you're like, okay, I have to buckle down and do this.
yeah.
And I'm even more incentivized to succeed.
Yeah, I was like, I don't, we just built up all this following on YouTube. We had these videos that were doing really well. And like everyone in my hometown, I lived in Guelph, and everyone in my hometown was like buzzing about what we were doing. We had like radio stations posting about it. We had record labels reaching out. And I was like, what are you doing? It's all happening. So yeah, I was terrified but I did hit the ground running, and the rest is history.
How have you enjoyed getting out? And obviously, the last year and a half has been a different story, but getting out and performing live. I mean, is that something that really lights your fire, or would you rather be in the studio or writing? Like, what are you, more of an introvert or an extrovert?
Definitely an extrovert. This year's been interesting because I've really become an introvert, and I've really enjoyed spending. I was able to put out a bunch of music this year, but I so crave for the moment when we can be touring again and back on stage. My keyboard player just texted me today and he's like, I'm fully vaxxed, man. Let's go play some shows. So like, yeah, I can't wait. And throughout COVID, the only real show I played was when Brett had me up on his stage in Toronto, which was just such a beacon of light for me and like such a dark time because we were right in the middle of that pandemic, and there was no glimpses of the reality, and that's such a big part of someone's life. For 8 years I was traveling and playing shows, and being that guy that was in front of people smiling and giving high fives and giving hugs, and that's such a great part of my life that was just subtracted, put on pause. Such a wild experience. So yeah, I mean, I was so grateful for that opportunity. It was awesome speaking with you there, and that whole night was awesome because it felt like we were on tour. We all, went back and had a couple drinks together, and it was like just felt like life. I was buzzing for weeks after that.
Yeah, Brett's a beast, man. We heard about the drive-in concept working in some countries in Europe, and this
Uh-huh.
was March of 2020. Immediately, he's FaceTiming me. I want to do this. Let's set this up. In the pandemic, there was a lot of uncertainty. A lot of venues weren't willing to partner with us, so we just set something up ourselves. And through Brett's inability to accept no as an answer, we ended up doing a bunch of drive-in shows in Alberta, and that kind of kicked off an entirely new ecosystem for this COVID time
Hmm.
of these drive-in shows. And it's great to hear that you felt like it was a bright light in a dark time. It still feels to me like it's a real band-aid solution and a proxy situation.
Yeah.
It's not the same as having a real show, and having people honk their horns at the end of songs is fucking weird. And it's an odd experience. I'm glad we did it. We did over 50 drive-in shows last summer between all my clients, but at the same time, it's like, man, I cannot wait for things to return to normal because
Yeah.
this is fine, but this is not why we're all in the business.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's connecting with people, and it's the energy that you get connecting with the crowd, and the energy of like, someone my neighbor walked by the other day, and she uh she knows what I do for a living, and she says, why don't you go on and do one of those online shows? And I said, yeah, yeah, I mean, we've done them, but it's not the same thing. I mean, she was explaining to me that she had watched the Jan Arden concert and how incredible it was. And I said, well, I believe it. I mean, Jan Arden's an incredible storyteller. She's a great singer. She can play, she plays her instrument. You could be in a room with Jan Arden, just Jan Arden, and enjoy the concert. But that's not the vibe of my concert. My concert's always been, lights and visuals and, like transitions that lead into a dance party that lead into this. And like our show has been something that we've, spent a lot of time on making it very, um, very different from the record. And there's people that can do those things really well. Like Brett's one of those guys that can get in. I've seen him, at the Junos. I saw him get into a room and just command a room with the guitar. It's not my skill. I don't have that skill. Um, so I totally agree with you because I miss the energy. The energy a crowd gives is almost what dictates the energy that I give. Sometimes you can turn it around. Sometimes if the energy of the crowd is bad, you can kind of switch it up and get them going. But most of the times, if it's going to be a good night or not. I don't know. I am, because I think I'm just such a social sponge and such an emotional sponge that it's like I crave that. I crave that. Such a strange thing, but I crave
Well,
it.
it's got to be an emotional driver for you. Otherwise, you wouldn't put yourself in such a vulnerable position to do this as a profession, I would imagine. And I think you are bang on. I mean, there is something to be said about the energy reciprocation between an audience and a band. And it's, as a guy who works as a promoter and agent and manager, standing side stage and watching that flow of energy back and forth between the audience and the performer is like,
Right.
that's one of the things that I love the most.
Those good nights are good nights, and
Oh my
it. It's just
God.
you feel it in your bones. I just got chills just thinking about it because
Yeah.
there's nothing. A good night when you're in it, like
Yes.
in terms of the road, in terms of playing a show. It's like like it's like all things are good, all things are positive. It feels. eh, Don't get me wrong. There are the shows you can turn around. You can turn a crowd around, but but I miss the positive ones. That's for sure.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. In country music, we've got a great infrastructure in Canada. Most of the festivals and fairs program a lot of country music. Um, it's been a blessing for our format. We're starting to see, especially since people have sort of dropped more of the borders between genres, they're booking more pop artists or even hip hop artists to perform at some of these fairs and festivals. But you don't have sort of the equivalent in your format of like a farm team system
Right.
to go out and play
Yeah.
50 to 60 small town fairs and rodeos, right? Like you
No.
just don't have that. And in country music, they have that. And that is a bit of a disadvantage for pop artists in Canada. I've always felt that.
Yeah, being a touring pop artist in Canada is not for the faint of heart. It's like, I had the first show I ever played as Virginia to Vegas was opening up for Maroon 5. So that was pretty incredible. But the first show I
Was that
ever
at the amphitheater?
it was at Grand Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland,
Okay,
at Salmon Fest. It was
right.
Maroon 5, Pitbull, American Authors, Simple Plan, and myself. And I'll never forget that day because it was amazing. But the first show I played as a solo, like as my own Virginia to Vegas show, I think there was 8 people in the audience, and that was only 2 months later. You know what I mean? And at that point, I had a platinum record on. I just opened up for Maroon 5 in front of 20,000 people, and I was well on the way to like feeling like a proper pop star. But the reality is a touring pop star or touring pop artist in Canada, it takes a lot of groundwork. And I got a phone call from my label, and they said, "We got to change things up, man. Like, like we really want to try to actually turn this into like a proper show. Like, you have charisma, you have energy. Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't really go to work. Are you ready to like put your head down and go to work?" And we did for years. And now we're like a decent touring pop act. But it's a huge disadvantage, you're right, because the infrastructure, and people don't really care about going to see pop acts unless you're huge.
Isn't that weird?
It is very strange.
Because you have 4 platinum records, which puts you in the same realm from a sales and streaming perspective as, say, Brett Kissel.
Sure.
And Brett's gonna go out, we're gonna play arenas, 4,000 seaters, um, and that just seems to be part and parcel to that format. And you're right, you have all of the stats that stack up and in probably some cases supersede what a lot of artists in country music are doing beyond you as far as a hard ticket show in terms of capacity. But you're sort of relegated to waiting it out in clubs or doing support slots until you really break through and become undeniable. And then you can do your own arena tour and
Yeah.
stack the bill with people that you believe in to support your show, to not only create a better show for the audience, but also give those people an opportunity and, pay it forward a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and we're hoping we're going to be there right now. Like, we're coming off, right now there's 2 songs in the top 20 that we have right now. We're coming off of 4 top 40s in the last year, one of them being a top, Betterman was, I don't know, top 10. This Just As Much song with Delaney Jane is top 10. Malibu is looking like it's going to be top 10. Just Friends was top 5. So, all of these great stats, great momentum. So, we're really hoping that when the world opens up, there's going to be a great audience for us because
There's going to be
that's,
some pent up demand.
yeah, we hope so. I mean, shoot, I've been working hard. So, um, you know, I hope so. I think so. And I think the momentum's good. And I'm excited to get the band back together, as corny as that sounds, and like really just get to work and create an incredible show. Like,
I'm sure you've missed those guys. I'm sure you missed everybody. Like it's been such a. I understand why we needed to do what we did with COVID from a policy perspective,
mm,
but it's been such a dampener on mental health. And
hmm
let's be honest, artists and people in our industry disproportionately suffer from that at the best of times. This has really been brutal on our industry, and it's good to see people remaining as positive through it as you have. Did you struggle in the beginning, or how did you deal with it when the world started sort of falling apart
mm.
once the lockdowns happened and everything else?
Yeah, I definitely struggled, big time. I was drinking a lot, which I think everyone was, um, which was terrible. Not just because of what it does to you physically and mentally, and it's just a bad habit to get into. So the end, you get less productive, blah blah blah. It was terrible. I hated it.
Do you have any other, like, drinking obviously is something that you've talked about. Do you smoke pot much, or like do you have any other things that you really need to kind of manage and keep a handle on, or is drinking primarily the one that's the worst?
That was kind of it, and it's the problem is it's not like I was like going down like a dark whiskey hole, and I was like turning into this like angry man.
Might
The
have
pro-
made you a better writer for country songs though.
I might have, but I was just, I'm sitting at home. What am I going to do? I'm going to make a nice dinner. I'm going to drink some wine. But the problem is one bottle leads to 2 bottles, and 2 bottles isn't that much if you're just having one crazy night. But 2 bottles over 3 months, if you're drinking 2 bottles of wine every night with dinner, well, that's got to do something to your system. That's got to do something to your mind. It's got to do. And I'm not saying that's how excessive it was, but it felt that way. Certainly did. Um, so it was, yeah, it was.
How'd you pull back from that?
I think the house really helped. I bought a house out in the country, and it was this old house built in the 1800s. Needed an incredible amount of work. Like, literally did everything here. So
Tore it down to the studs.
yeah, like pretty close, like it's pretty it was pretty fun project, but that was kind of like, well, it broke up the cycle. It wasn't just dinner movie or dinner sitting at my studio desk, like, and that was the thing that my friends in my band had told me that had become really challenging for them. At least for me, I did have the one outlet. I had the music production and I had the songwriting. So I spent a tremendous amount of time on Zoom and on FaceTime with friends in Nashville and my friends here in Toronto and writing songs, producing songs. But I had that creative thing to do. But like my drummer, would call me and be like, "Man, like what am I doing? Like I feel like I'm living in a circle. Like this is he was awful." And I'd be like, "I get it, man. Like hang in there. Like trust me, as soon as I can go play shows, I'm with you." Same with my keyboard player, like it hit those professional musicians, I think, the hardest because that was just wiped out.
Yeah, at least as an artist, you might have some residuals coming in or some royalties, but as a musician, as soon as touring stops, so does your income.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was really rough on that cross section of our industry. And well, glad you've been able to pull out of it. And it sounds like you're working on fitness and even making some evolution during this time for yourself and setting some goals. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I just well, you were mentioning that you're doing some fighting, some sparring, and I bought a heavy bag. I bought it more as decoration for the house because it's like one of those brown, it's not leather, but it looks like that. It's like an old vintage 70s
Yeah,
brown
yeah, yeah.
canvas bag. And I bought it and I was like, this is really cool. And then I was just sitting and I had a spare bedroom upstairs and it's just sitting there. I thought I should really like just use this thing. This would be awesome. So I started going on YouTube and I found these videos where you do the heavy bag training. And I've been doing the Peloton stuff, which is great. But I wanted something that was, new and a different challenge. And so I started these boxing classes, and they're amazing. But the problem is, for me, I don't like to be bad at something. So when I do something, it's almost obsessive. So for the last 3 weeks, I've been doing these classes every day. I did class every day. I did class every day. I did class, and it wasn't
How are your
until
hands holding up, by the way?
my knuckle on my right hand. Um, I thought I was getting arthritis, and I was like,
Right.
"What's going on?" And then I remembered. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm hitting a punching bag." And
Yes.
I'm a 6'2", 200-pound guy. It's like there's probably a bunch of force. You know what I mean? So,
Uh-huh.
so I don't know. So anyway, that's yeah, that's the one thing. But I just bought.
They'll harden up over time. You'll get scar tissue there, and it'll be
Is that
fine.
yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Do you wear gloves or wrap them?
I haven't been wrapping them. I just bought the wraps because everything was closed. Right, we couldn't buy anything.
Right.
So I just bought the wraps. I went to like Walmart and bought wraps yesterday. So I haven't tried it with the wraps yet. But yeah, I got gloves. I think they're like 12-ounce, just like, sparring gloves that
Yeah.
Everlast or whatever. But it's fun. It's like so much fun. And last week, midweek, I had one class. It was final round. And I thought I was gassed, like third round or fourth round. I was like, just throwing very slow punches, very slow, just trying not to give up. And then fifth round, the guy, I think his name's Nate Bauer. He's pretty motivating, which I really like in workouts. I like the motivation. I like the team aspect. I like the competitive stuff. Like for me, that's really exciting. And anyway, he's like, "Come on, give it all you got." Like obviously something a fitness instructor would say, but he said it with some oomph, and I believed it, and I did, and I went that last round, and it was a freestyle round. That the other rounds were all specific combos, like 1-1-2, 1-1-2, 1-1-2-1-3, 1-2-1-3, and this one was freestyle inside, fast as you can, give it what you got, and I fell into a rhythm and I went like full and I had that runner's high, which I'd never really gotten from running, but I'd only really gotten from cycling. And I finished that workout and I was like, I get it. I was like, I totally get boxing. This is amazing.
Sounds like you're hooked.
Yeah, I was pretty hooked. It was pretty cool.
Do you think you'll ever join a gym, get in the ring, do some actual sparring at some point? How are you feeling about that?
I think that'd be fun. I don't think I don't think I'd ever be like a I don't think I'd be very good at it. but in terms of the workout aspect of it, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would be good. Maybe I should do it.
Yeah, I
But
mean, well, it's a highly detailed, very nuanced, intricate thing that you're doing, right? It's kind of like somebody picking up a guitar, noodling for a few months, and going, "Yeah, I'm ready to go out on tour." It's
yeah,
like
exactly.
it takes a while to develop
Yeah.
that skill because it is such a hard skill to develop. So,
It's
yeah, as
also
long
just
as
like
you're
the form, like
Mhm.
the shoulder placement, the foot placement. Like, how do you move your feet quickly? What's the way you're standing? How does your punch look? And I got obsessed with my golf swing recently and like how it looks. Like when I watch it back on video, is like, is that a good golf swing? And so you're so right when you say like the nuance, the detail. It's like it is almost very artistic. I think boxing is very artistic. It's kind of cool.
It is.
Yeah.
It's it's funny. It's one of the closest things to chess, because you're
Mm,
thinking through what your opponent's doing. You're starting to time your opponent's rhythm. You start to figure out where they might be leaving themselves vulnerable at times, and maybe let them get away with that just often enough so they feel safe doing it,
mm,
and then
that's
make them
cool.
pay for it. So yeah, it's I'm really excited for you, man. And just so you know, one of my good friends is Damon Feldman, who does all the celebrity boxing.
Oh
He
my
just had a
gosh.
card in Atlantic City. He's going to do a card in Florida in October. So if you really take this seriously, we'll get you set up with a proper fight.
Could you imagine? That'd be so cool.
You could fight Bieber or something. Who
Oh
knows?
my I got nothing to say about that.
Fair enough. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to pull yourself out of the mire. It's been a tough time for a lot of people, and it's going to be great to see you back out on the road. And congratulations on all the success you have had and the success that you continue to have. And LA in the Rear Viewer is the latest project. And when did you drop that again?
So LA in the Review was it was a combination of uh, songs. It wasn't.
Yeah,
It was like a combo of the two EPs. So I think that came out around the time of Malibu. So
yeah, it was a bit of a compilation
yeah,
record, right?
it kind of paired them up. Uh,
Repackaged.
yeah, it's a thing, that they're doing in marketing. I don't know. I didn't have much to do with that. I just wrote the songs.
Fair enough. And what are you working on moving forward that you're excited about?
Got a lot of records. Yeah, a lot of music. I'm pretty pumped. We have a song coming out in August, which is with a country artist, which I'm really excited about, but I can't say who it is just yet. But I'm sure you know her. She's an amazing lady, and she sounds incredible on the record. So I'll tell you that off the air. Uh,
I'm jacked up about that. That's
and,
exciting, man.
So it's pretty cool. It's kind of like it really flipped the switch there. It's kind of like a rock record, but with a pop vocal and a country vocal, and it's pretty cool. So we'll see how it goes. So that's the next thing that we're really excited about.
That sounds intriguing, man. Can't wait to hear it. And congratulations again. Thanks for taking the time to do this today.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.